Thank you for joining me for another video. Last time we got into Genesis chapter 12. We began with God calling Abraham to leave his homeland, leave everything that he knew behind, and this chapter begins the next parasha. Last week we finished, the week before last we finished up with Parashat Noah, and parasha, by the way, is the weekly Torah portion reading. This past week we began Parashat Lech Lecha. Happens to be my favorite because of the content, because of that initial, what we discussed last week. This week we're going to get into what is actually kind of a messed up incident. And there is no hiding that. And you should know, before the anti-Semites jump out there, this is not standard operating procedure. This is not the way we do things. It just isn't. It never really has been. Although it is true that there are 3 times in the book of Genesis that this happens. But this is before Israel ever existed. Okay, so these are our pre-Israelite ancestors. Okay, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Pre-Israelite ancestors. And we'll just leave it at that for this week. So let's go ahead and jump into, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish up the rest of the chapter this week. Genesis chapter 12, we're going to go to verse 10, and it goes through verse 20. So, verse 10 begins, Vayhi ra'av ba'aretz, vayared Avram Misraima lagur sham, ki chaved hara'av ba'aretz. It happened that there was a famine, it says, and in the land, and Avram, he went down to Egypt to temporarily live there, to sojourn there, to travel there, if you will, although this isn't the word for travel. Because the famine was so severe in the land. The land here, of course, meaning the land of Canaan, where he lived. Verse 11, Vayhi ka'asher hikriv lavo Misraima, Vayomer el Sarai ishto, Hinena yadati ki isha yafat mare'at. So he says, I should go back to the beginning of the verse. And it happened as Avram was coming into Egypt, as he was getting close to Egypt, literally as he came to Egypt, as he came close to Egypt, that's literally. He says to his wife, Sarai, he says, hey, listen, my love, my dearest, my sweetest, listen, please listen to me. This is very important. You're beautiful. I love you. You're so beautiful, he says. You're so beautiful to look at. It's like, this is how he opens this up, He's very sweet, very tender, very, and I'm sure she's thinking in the back of her mind, okay, and what are you getting at? What do you want me to do this time, But we're going to see. And if you know the story, you know the story. Wahaya ki yir'u otach HaMisrim, and it's going to happen that whenever these Egyptians see you, وَأَمْرُوا إِشْتَوْ زَوْتْ, they'll say, this is his wife. وَهَرْگُوا أُثِي وَأُتَّخْ يَحَيُّ. He says they're going to see that you're beautiful, and they're going to say, listen, this is his wife. This beautiful, beautiful, radiant 65-plus-year-old woman is his wife. And they'll kill me, but they'll leave you alive. Like, you could just see the wheels turning in his head, and I'm sure that, if you're like me, you're looking at Sarai right here, and you're just like, she better have been questioning everything. I would be if I had been her. And that's why God didn't make me her. Because this story never would have made the cut in my Bible. Imrina ahothiat. Please tell them that you're my sister. Leman yitavli, so that it can go well with me. Ba'avurech, for your sake. Wahaita nafshi biglalech, and so that I can live on your account. They'll let me live because of you. And we're going to circle back to this. Obviously, if you've watched my videos for any amount of time now, you know that I will circle back to it, because this happens to be a very key moment. And there's a lot of nuance going on. There's a lot of interesting things happening here that, honestly, in the English, we can really sort of feel kind of divorced from. Let's just be open and honest about that, okay? Sometimes English translation does a really good job and it gets it, you really understand it. But other times, because here we are some, 3,500 years later, culture has changed. Use of language has changed. It's not that we don't understand it, it's that we don't fully understand it sometimes in the translation. So, verse Yudalit 14 says, Wayhi kavo Avram Misraima, so as it happened that Avram came to Egypt. Wayeru hamisrim et haisha ki yafa hi maod, that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. She's okay. According to the Torah's own account, she is over the age of 65 at this point. If you look at a 65-plus-year-old woman, okay, it doesn't matter how degenerate you are, you're probably not going to be thinking to yourself, wow, she's hot, I have to get her, for the king. Probably not going to be thinking that. So it really makes me wonder what was going on here, how exactly she looked. Perhaps she looked exceptionally well for her age. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm left to believe. She looked, wow, this 65-year-old, wow, she looks, 30 or something. I can see that. I can understand that. Much younger than that now. I mean, this 65-year-old looks 20. No, she doesn't. Okay, let's be honest. No, that doesn't happen. Not even, I don't care how much makeup she's wearing. Okay. Verse 15. Wayeru otach sare Pharaoh Wayahalu otach El Paro Utuqah Haisha Beth Paro. So it says that these officials of Pharaoh, these what does this say? Officials. Okay, so it's like nobles. Like this is the aristocracy, right? So they see this woman. They see her. It says, and they praised her to Pharaoh. It actually says praise. If you were listening, you're familiar with, the word Hallel or Hallelu. You understand? Yes, that is the exact word praise in Hebrew. So they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken. The woman, it says, was taken to the house of Pharaoh. Like, what is going on here in her head, I often wonder that. And it's easy for me to do 3,500 years after the fact, I mean, makes no difference to me. She's dead, it's not like I'm concerned about her life, so it makes no difference to me. But I do wonder, I wonder what she thought at this time, I wonder how she felt. What was going through her mind? And her husband wants her to say she's his sister? Come on. Ulavram Hetiv Ba'urah. So it went well for Avram, for her sake, on her behalf. Wayhilo son Uvaqar. So he got Wayhilo. So he acquired. There we go. That's a good way to say it. Son, sheep, like flocks. Uvaqar, and cows, cattle. Wahamurim, and donkeys. Waqavadim, and slaves, or perhaps manservants would be another way to say it. And Ushpahoth, and these maid servants, female servants. Okay. Attendants, I guess, would also be a good word. Where am I? Wa'athonoth, and so these she donkeys. Well, it's really weird that it mentions she donkeys like 3 words after it mentions donkeys. Gemalim, and camels. And that's a really interesting one. There's a lot of pushback from the atheists and agnostics on just the word camel being there. Okay, we know that yes, it was not very widespread, but there were camels that were domesticated back then. So we have to assume logic would give us the the impression that perhaps a king is going to have camels. Doesn't matter how rare it is. He's going to have it. Why? Because he's the king. He does what he wants, especially back then. Now they don't really do what they want, but back then, for sure. Wainaga, this is 17, verse 17. Wainaga Hashem et paro nagarim gdolim ve'eth betho al dvar Sarai Eshet Avram. So it says here that yes, all of these good things are happening for Avram. However, at the same time, it tells us that Hashem afflicted them with serious afflictions, with great sicknesses, plagues. Plague, singular. They got very, very sick. Okay, they were not in good health. That's what it's getting at. Okay. Both the Pharaoh and his house, because of Sarai, the wife of Avram. Wayiqra Par'o Avram. So Pharaoh he calls to Avram, Wayomer Mazot Asita li. What is this that you've done to me? He says. Wayomer Mazot Asita li. What is this that you've done to me? He says. Lama lo higadta li ki ishtachahi. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? So here's my question. This is just the very first question that I have about this entire situation. Aside from I wonder what was going on in Sarah's mind. How did he know she was his wife? He's just not doing well. He's not in great health. How did he know that Sarai was the wife of Avram? I don't know. I'm hoping you do. No, I honestly, I don't know for sure. I assume it was probably told to him in a dream, or perhaps more down to earth, he asked Sarai. Said, why am I being afflicted because of you? And she's like, oh, well, really, I'm married. You want to marry me? But it's really, I'm already married. This is where it gets good. This is like, this is where the whole story just gets like, what? From the Egyptian side. We are in verse 19, it looks like. Yeah, verse 19. Lama amarta ahothihi. Why did you tell me that this is your wife? That she is your wife? Wa iqah uthahli. And I took her to me. Wa isha la isha. I took her to me for a wife. Waqata hinne ishtacha kah walech. So he says, but she's already your wife. So here's your wife. He says, go take her and get. You know, as the text in may come out, right? Take her and get out of here. You know, leave. Lech happens to be the very first word of the name of this week's of this Torah portion. Lech lecha, leave, go, beat it, scram, get. As my dad said to the dog when I was growing up a couple of times. It's amazing the things we remember from like when we were really little kids. You know, like a few things just sort of pop out. You know, my dad used to roll up a single sheet of paper and he'd slap it in his hand anytime the dog would act up, just to scare him. Oh no, don't beat me. You know, he never did. He never struck the dog, but it scared him enough. You know, I love that dog too. It's my favorite dog. Off the topic of dogs, on to the topic of, I don't know, Bible. Verse 20. ויסעו אלו פרעה אנשים וישלחו אותו ואת אשתו ואת כל אשר לו. So Pharaoh, he orders these men to send him being Avram, and his wife and all that was his away. I love it, man. I love it. He's just like, he's just, because at this point I assume he's very upset. I assume he's very angry. I assume that, the Pharaoh is not happy. His whole family, his whole household, maybe even his slaves, they're all suffering a plague on account of his unintentional sin. I do not, I will forgive him for being a little bit upset, being a little bit, get out of my country, don't ever come back. You know, I get that. I'll forgive him for that, because I would be too. Okay, so what's going on in the story? So there's a famine in the land of Israel, what was then called Canaan, what is now called Israel. And no, I'm not going to say that it's also Palestine, because it's not. They haven't defined boundaries. That is literally the number one thing you need to do to have a country: define boundaries. And the reason they haven't defined the boundaries, the Palestinians, the PLO, not PLO anymore, the Palestinian Authority, the PA, that's so much better than PLO. Because now they're just like secret terrorists. They're not overt terrorists. They've moved on since the Yasser Arafat years 20 years ago. Now that I've successfully marked them, let's move on with the story. So, this is modern day Israel, and you've got these this huge tribe that Abraham has with him. He's still called Avram at the time, and there's a famine all throughout the land, and it's very severe. It tells us it's very severe famine. And so he leaves. He goes to where? He goes to Egypt. Why? Why does he go to Egypt? Well, because Egypt has grain. Well, why does Egypt have grain? Because Egypt doesn't care about the rain. Egypt doesn't need the rain. Egypt has a river. To be fair, Israel also has rivers. But the Nile River is different because every year it would flood and it would fertilize the area, carry out all the bad soil, bring in fresh, rich, nutrient-rich silt into the region. And these guys are why in Egypt became world power back in the day. It's because they had food for it. If you could feed an army, you could take over the world. The problem with every single army that's ever tried to take over the world is food. They just couldn't make enough. Ask Hitler. Okay, ask Napoleon. Okay, their problem was mostly Russia. Okay, but and they never packed winter clothing because stupid people. But the Egyptians, they had food, and they had this nice little empire at one point. The Romans, what stopped them? Well, there were a number of things, but they started running out of food on the extremities as their troops are forcing outward. They start running out of food, so they start sealing the roads, and that one goes on for so long, and then the emperor dies, and everything just sort of, you know. And really that applies to most countries. You know, and so we see the same thing with Babylonia. You know, they were running low on. If you have enough food to feed your army and enough munitions, enough weapons, enough ammo, you know, enough armor to supply your military, you can take over the world. You just have to have, you know, food and supplies first. That was everybody's problem, really. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So, they go to Egypt. Why? Because Egypt has food. Not just a little bit. They have a lot of food. A lot of food. This is a recurring theme all throughout the Torah. A lot of food. Well, I say all throughout the Torah. Okay. The first 2 books of the Torah, there's a lot of talk about how Egypt is the breadbasket of the ancient world. Okay. They get there. Now, Avram, he's kind of like a, you know, he's a minor, let's call him a minor state official. Okay? He is the leader of this nomadic tribe or clan or whatever you want to call them, who are visiting the region because of this terrible, terrible famine back in homeland. They show up. And naturally, because he's, you know, this minor noble personality, minor state official, we'll call him, he gets an audience with the king of Egypt. Okay, and he makes this plan along the way. He's like, "Listen, my love." Love of my life, my night sky, the only star in my moon, my love, my treasure, my everything, my all. You are so beautiful. You are so beautiful. And that's a problem now because these guys are degenerates. They are godless heathens. They weren't. I'm just, obviously I'm paraphrasing. They're godless heathens, and they are going to take you and murder me. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? No, he did probably not like that. But she went along with it for whatever the case may have been. You know, for whatever was going on in her mind. You know, maybe that was just kind of expected at the time. She says, "Yeah, okay, so I'll." Well, the text doesn't say this, but I'm extrapolating from the information that's there. She basically agrees and says, "Yeah, okay, I'll be your sister." Tee hee hee. You know, I'll tell them I'm your sister. Great, wonderful. And they get to Egypt, and what happens? It's exactly as Avram predicted. These degenerate, godless heathens go to Pharaoh and they're like, "You would not believe how beautiful this senior citizen is, sire." I struggle with the whole her age thing because, like, I can't. No. Let me rephrase that. Okay, I'm 40 years old now. There are actresses who are old enough to be my mother. Okay, 65-ish, 60 to, let's say, 60 to 70, who I think are still beautiful. Okay, so, all right, so maybe Pharaoh was into, slightly older women, and maybe Sarah looked younger than she really was. I don't know what was going on. However, here's what I do know. Abraham's entire plan rested on them sparing him if they thought she was his sister. Now, why would they spare him? Why not just kill him and, take her? Well, as it happens, it's diplomacy, right? So we come to this Pharaoh, who, by the way, was Nefertiti the fourth. Okay, this is the 16th ruler of the 10th dynasty. So they go to Pharaoh Khedi, we'll call him, and they say to him, "Oh yeah, she's my sister." Why say that she's his sister, not his wife? Well, because in the ancient world, diplomacy basically said that if a foreign dignitary, if this foreign chieftain, that's the word I was looking for earlier, this foreign chieftain comes to you and he's anybody of any importance, you can make a deal with him. If he has, let's say, a sister, you make a deal for his sister for a wife, and there's peace between you. You can, throw all the gifts that you want at this chieftain, and his sister will marry you, and, the two peoples are friendly. Okay? And that really, honestly, it continues even up to, I would say even up to the modern day, but that really sort of stopped in the 20th century. That seems to have stopped anyway. With the European dynasties, they're all, I mean nothing bad by this. They're all relatives, okay? They're all related. In fact, Queen Victoria was the grandmother, Queen Victoria of UK, okay, was the grandmother of the English king, the Kaiser Bill, the German king, and the Russian Tsar Nicholas during World War I. They were all first cousins. They were all her grandchildren. And the joke was that, if their grandmother had known that they were fighting each other, she would have put an end to it. And it's like, I'm sorry, like they're not fighting each other, they're sending their people to die for kicks and giggles, okay? They're joking about it the whole time. This is one of the things that really kind of bothers me about World War I. They're joking about it. They're still cousins. They still love each other. Meanwhile, their people are dying in a war that, by the way, the kings couldn't be bothered to participate in, because then they might have to fight their own cousin. The futility of war sometimes, man. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the two peoples, they'd be friends, they'd be kind of related now. Ha, that sort of a thing. Well, that all blows up, obviously. That all blows up as soon as the Pharaoh gets sick. Okay, not just him. but presumably all his wives, because this is a culture that had multiple wives, or a wife and mistresses. I guess it really depends on how you look at it. To be fair, Israelite culture, technically there's nothing wrong with a man having more than one wife. You see the same thing in Arabic culture. You see the same thing in the ancient Aramaean culture. Not in the modern, well, no, actually, even in the modern world. But the Aramaeans don't exist. They're gone. They're gone. They've been Islamicized. They've been Arabicized. But most of the Middle East is polygamous by nature. Doesn't necessarily mean everyone's practicing, but it's just kind of a general understanding that it's not prohibited. And we actually see the same thing in Europe for a while. Not anymore. Well, 20 years ago I could have said not anymore. Times have changed. Times have changed. So people in the Pharaoh's household start getting sick. So there's one commentary that says that they were all constipated. And that I like that one because it's funny. But it's probably realistically probably not the historical reality. But it is funny. There's another commentary that says that they were afflicted with sarath. They had a skin condition. Okay, that you can't be intimate with this skin condition. Okay, and that one I suppose is reasonable. Certainly not as funny as being constipated, but exactly what the plague is not important. It may very well have just been a cold for all we know. Probably wasn't, but it could have been, right? And so Pharaoh is not a bad guy. He's not an evil guy, okay? This particular Pharaoh actually left instructions to his son, saying things like, don't even abuse the slave. This is not a bad guy. He's not evil. He's just, on the other side of things, right? It's like a sports competition of your choice. You've got Team A or Team B. It's not on the other side of things. Across the field. Maybe from a town you dislike, but that doesn't make them evil. They're not bad people. Same thing with this Pharaoh here. He's not a bad guy. I mean, he may have been a bad guy, but he wasn't an evil guy. He did bad things for sure. He did bad things, but he wasn't evil, right? He's not going to just get furious with Abraham. Oh, I can't believe you tried to pawn your wife off as your sister. I can't believe that you would deceive me like this. Now I'm going to kill you and I'm going to take her anyway. Ha ha ha. He's not that type of a guy. No, he just says, you out. Take all this stuff that you got, okay? We'll call it a consolation prize for me almost molesting your wife. That's what he says. Leave. Go. I don't want you here anymore. And we're not actually told that Abraham ever went back. So I assume things ended on a sour note. But, it's what happens when you play stupid games, I guess. Anyways. So yeah, that explains a little bit about what's going on in this story. A lot of cultural differences compared to now. And that's all I got. That's all I really wanted to talk about this week. Next week we're going to get into some more interesting stuff. Hopefully I'll have, a little bit more insightful stuff for you. So anyway, with that being said, until next time, shalom.